it's time to welcome to the show. He's a sports talk show host at iHeartMedia. He's an afternoon host on ESPN 1530 and on 700 WLW and a contributor for The Athletic. He is Mo Egger. Mo, how are you?
Tre, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Pretty good, man. I really appreciate you joining me on the Wise Guy Sports Show on the Worldwide.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So let's get right into it, Mo. Let's first talk about the pulse of the city. Living here in Cincinnati and seeing the Bengals not win a playoff game for 30 years, describe the excitement you have seen from Bengal fans throughout the city since they won their first playoff game, obviously, against the Raiders, and now they are one win away from the Super Bowl.
It's been insane. You know, not too long ago, people were talking about how they didn't care about the Bengals anymore and how apathy was setting in. And, you know, it'd be better if the team would just move when their lease expires at Paul Brown Stadium. And now the city is basically painted orange and black. It's been a lot of fun. And, you know, badly needed. I mean, you mentioned the 31 years of not winning a playoff game. Cincinnati sports, you know, people always talk about how they seem cursed to have something that makes people feel good about the town and makes people feel good about sports in the city. And the fact that something like, you know, Joe Burrow's arrival lived up to the hype, which doesn't happen nearly as much as maybe it should in sports. It's all galvanized the city. It's all been a lot of fun. And I can't imagine what it's going to be like if they pull off the upset on Sunday.
I absolutely agree with you. And so, Mo, did you get a chance to attend the home playoff game against the Raiders? Did you get a chance to go down there?
Believe it or not, no. As somebody who's been a season ticket holder for so long, I was in Wichita, Kansas with the UC basketball team watching at the hotel bar with a lady eating a salad. I certainly I put on a performance for yelling at the TV, but no, I was not unfortunately not at PBS.
Yeah. So after they beat the Raiders and the matchups were announced for the divisional round of the playoffs, Mo, I thought to myself, man, the Bengals, they got a great chance to upset the Titans in this playoff game. I never looked at the Titans as being a juggernaut like the Kansas City Chiefs or like teams in the NFC like the Buccaneers or the Packers. I never looked at that Titans team as being that type of team. And we all know Burrow is better than Tannehill. Did you have that same kind of feeling heading into the matchup against the Titans?
For a lot of the reasons you just said. First of all, you had to like the quarterback matchup. And I mean, you know, look at the regular season. The team with the best quarterback won every division in the NFL. In the opening weekend of the postseason, the team with the better quarterback won 5 of the 6 games. I think San Francisco being the exception with their win over Dallas. So quarterback play has never mattered more in the NFL. So you started with that. Joe Burrow, you feel better about him than you do Ryan Tannehill. Nissan Stadium is not considered as intimidating a venue as, say, Arrowhead Stadium or what they have in Buffalo. So you kind of felt pretty good about that. And you sort of had the sense the Bengals weren't going to need to score 35 points to win this game. Now, you're worried about Derrick Henry. And if you would have told me Joe Burrow is going to get sacked 9 times and all they're going to do is score 1 touchdown, I would have said there's a very little chance they win the game. And that's actually what happened. But the matchup itself was not that intimidating. And, you know, let's face it, even this game on Sunday, as long as Joe Burrow makes the trip, I'm going to feel okay about their chances. Having a great quarterback gives you a chance in every single game. And I certainly felt that way against Tennessee.
Let's transition and talk about the AFC Championship. The Bengals, they beat the Chiefs in Week 17 at Paul Brown Stadium, 34-31. In that game mode, they clinched the AFC North, you know, being able to win that game. And in that game also, they overcame a 14-point deficit. Do you believe when 2 teams match up against each other in the regular season and they have to play again in the postseason, can there be some carryover into the playoff matchup? Or do you believe that Zach Taylor should just start over with a brand new game plan?
Well, the game plan against Kansas City was throw the ball to Jamar Chase. And so I hope they don't take that out of the game plan because it works. Yeah, it's a good question. Look, every team makes adjustments. I got to think if you're Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, you're going into this game saying, I'm not letting Jamar Chase do that again. I'm going to make somebody else beat me because Jamar played the best game I've ever seen a wide receiver play. Yeah. I think when you look at Joe Burrow, he's played better the second go around when he's played a team a second time. Look at Baltimore this year. He was really good the first game against Baltimore, and I know the personnel was compromised because of COVID and other injuries, but he was better the second game. Pittsburgh, he didn't nearly throw it as much, but they were more explosive, this team was, against Pittsburgh the second go around. And so I do think there's something there. But look, the Chiefs have a head coach who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and they've got a great quarterback. And so you certainly think offensively they're going to do things a little bit more efficiently over the course of the game than they did in the second half of that football game. Cincinnati's defense was really good against Travis Kelce, was really good pretty much against everybody. And Lou Anarumo saved a zero blitz for the precise right moment in that football game. And the MO against Patrick Mahomes is you don't blitz. So Lou Anarumo is going to have to call a similar type of game. But yeah, look, I think that the most interesting sort of chess match in the game is going to be the Bengals would love to throw the ball to Jamar Chase 11 more times like they did the first go around. Are they going to be able to? And if the answer is no, who steps up?
I agree with you 1,000%. So there are some great skill position players in this game. For the Bengals, you got two young elite receivers in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Both receivers had over 1,000 receiving yards for the season. And you got a proven slot receiver in Tyler Boyd. And for the Chiefs, they got Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, obviously two big-time playmakers. But this game is about the two young quarterbacks, Mo, and Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes. And so there's statistics in the Week 17 matchup. Mahomes, he went 26 of 35, 259 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Burrow went 30 of 39, 446 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. So before the season started, I think most people would have laughed at this question I'm about to ask you, Mo, but I think it's a legit question now. Which quarterback going into this game has the advantage?
Well, Patrick Mahomes is playing at home, and so you start there. I think what's going to be interesting, though, is how good are the offensive lines. So, you know, when Kansas City, we saw in the Super Bowl last year, what do they have to do? They after they lost to the Buccaneers, they remade their entire offensive line.
They did.
Joe's offensive line has to be better, and frankly, Joe has to be better than he was against Tennessee, just not holding on to the football quite as long. Patrick Mahomes is playing at home, and you know, frankly, I think he's the most physically gifted quarterback in the NFL. He's played in games like this before. And so I think you're being fair if you say, you know what, advantage Kansas City because of Patrick Mahomes. But I certainly don't think Joe Burrow is going to be intimidated by Arrowhead Stadium. I think he has a bit of an advantage because he's done well against this defense before. And I also feel like you can look at the AFC title game. You're playing the Buffalo Bills. What do you think is going to happen? Stephon Diggs is going to go nuts. Well, what happened in that game? Gabe Davis went crazy. So are there things that you can take from what Buffalo did, albeit Kansas City played most of that game without Tyrann Mathieu? It looks like he's going to be able to play on Sunday. But are there things that Buffalo did with kind of the secondary wide receiver option that the Cincinnati Bengals can do with T. Higgins? I don't necessarily think the Bengals are at a disadvantage when you look at the quarterback matchup because Joe Burrow is that good, but Patrick Mahomes is a beast, man. And, you know, even if you go back to the game at Paul Brown Stadium in the first half, he made some unbelievable throws. He made an unbelievable throw, I think, in the second half of that game that ended up being an incompletion because the ball was knocked away, where he rolls all the way to the right side, throws across his body to the other end of the field, deep downfield, and almost completes the pass. He can do some things with his arm that are just otherworldly, and that's why this matchup is so intriguing.
For sure. In these playoff games at this time of year, there are elite players all over the field, but we know the weakness of the Bengals offense is their O-line, Mo. They gave up 9 sacks last week to the Titans. I've never seen a quarterback be able to win a game getting sacked 9 times. I've never seen a quarterback get sacked 4 times and be able to win a playoff game, let alone 9. It shows you Joe Burrow's toughness. But what do you believe Zach Taylor needs to do up front to offset that Chiefs pass rush with Chris Jones, Frank Clark, and Melvin Ingram?
Quicker passes, screen passes, get rid of the football quickly, throw the ball short, do what you can. I think that's the best way to mitigate a pass rush. It's sort of, if you go back to Andy Dalton's best year, as good as that offensive line was, he became, with Hugh Jackson running the offense, became the best quarterback in the NFL at getting rid of the ball quickly. Joe can get rid of the ball quickly and decisively. I think you have to design an offense for this game specifically that doesn't have him holding the ball as long as he did. And again, the offensive line it's just not a good group. I mean, just, call it what it is.
Yeah.
This is sort of the price you pay for prioritizing what you prioritized in the draft, and for, frankly, Jackson Carman not being as good as you hoped, and for Riley Reif getting hurt. So I think you have to work around that, and I think you have to figure out a way to have Joe get rid of the football quickly. I think that involves Tyler Boyd. I think that involves Joe Mixon catching the football a lot, because he's going to take hits and he's going to get sacked. The thing that I worry about more than the sacks, the reason why the Bengals beat Kansas City more than any other, 0 turnovers. The reason why they beat the Raiders, 0 turnovers. The reason why they, hung all those points on Baltimore at the end of the year, 0 turnovers. The reason why they beat Denver 15-10, 0 turnovers. What I worry about is suddenly the pressure gets to Joe, and instead of him hitting the deck and the Bengals losing yardage, those turn into he tries to make a play, which we saw a lot of this early in the season. He tries to make a play, it turns into a pick. You cannot afford turnovers in this football game. We saw it against San Francisco. We saw it against the Chargers. We saw it against the Packers and Bears as well. That, from the standpoint of putting pressure on Joe Burrow, that worries me more than the actual sacks.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think also going into this game, Mo, and, I want to know if you agree with this. I believe an X factor is going to be Joe Mixon, because the Chiefs, they are ranked 21st against the run. They give up a little over 118 rushing yards per game. And we saw earlier this year, Joe Mixon against the Raiders in week 11, he had 30 carries, 123 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Then the following week against the Steelers, he had a dominant performance, 28 carries, 165 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. He hasn't had over 60 yards rushing since week 12. How important do you believe it is for Joe Mixon to be involved in the game plan?
Well, I think that's going to be easier to say on Sunday, because what I'm interested in, does Kansas City say, look, we're not letting Joe throw the ball all over the place against us, run it? And do the Bengals say, okay? I mean, go back to the game against Pittsburgh at Paul Brown Stadium. The Pittsburgh Steelers had a DB out, but I mean, they essentially said, we're not letting Joe Burrow throw it all over the joint. And the Bengals said, cool, we'll run it on you. If you're going to choose to let Joe Mixon run, we will oblige, we will run. So I think that's going to be really worth paying attention to. I don't know that you go into a game like this with a specific number of runs planned, but look, the best way to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field is longer possessions. And the way you have longer possessions is by running the football. So it's got to be a part of what they do. It gets mitigated by the Kansas City Chiefs jumping out to a 14-0 lead, which is what happened at Paul Brown Stadium. You don't want to have to play from behind on the road. And if you do, your running game is going to be compromised.
Live here on the Wise Guys Sports Show with Mo Egger of iHeart Media Radio, afternoon host on ESPN 1530. So, Mo, last week we saw Jamar Chase. He had a pretty good game, 5 receptions, 109 receiving yards, had a big catch and run for 57 yards in the first quarter against Tennessee. T. Higgins stepped up, 7 receptions, 96 receiving yards. Against the pass, Chiefs defense ranked 27, give up 251 pass yards per game. Let's assume Steve Spagnuolo game plan is to take Jamar Chase out of the game. Which other receiver do you see stepping up? Will it be Higgins again? Do you think Tyler Boyd will have to have a big-time game? Uzomah, as a tight end in the passing game?
I would try to take advantage of that Kansas City secondary deep downfield, which is what the Buffalo Bills did. And again, without Tyrann Mathieu, you saw a lot of miscommunication issues. And I mean, there were just gaping holes in that secondary. And so I would try to see if there could be something similar. And the best way to do that is to use T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins is a huge factor in this game. Because I believe that Kansas City is going to say Jamar Chase isn't going to have 11 more catches against us. So, okay, where do you look? T. Higgins is the second best guy, and he's the second best downfield threat. So I think he's a huge factor on Sunday.
A couple more questions for you, Mo. Mm-hmm. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the Bengals defense, Lou Admiral's group. He's a defensive coordinator for the Bengals. In the Week 17 matchup, they gave up 414 total yards of offense to the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a different challenge than they had in their divisional round matchup against the Titans. Titans, they got a dynamic rushing attack with Derrick Henry returning back last week. This is Patrick Mahomes and that high-powered Chiefs offense. What's your expectations for the Bengals defense heading into this game?
Going to be watching Trey Hendrickson to see if he can put pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Going to be watching Jesse Bates, who had an up and down regular season and then has been terrific against the Raiders and Titans here in the postseason. And going to be watching the linebackers. The two biggest plays of the postseason have been turned in by Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. Those areas, to me, what you always worry about with the Bengals is stopping an opposing tight end. My entire life, they've been bad at stopping opposing tight ends. They haven't been good at protecting the middle of the field this year. We saw what George Kittle did. We saw what Travis Kelce did in the first half against Kansas City. We saw what Mark Andrews did. I really, really worry about Travis Kelce in this game just because the Bengals' weakness on defense has been covering tight ends, and Travis is going to Canton one day. So he's needless to say, he's a matchup nightmare for everybody, but in particular for the Bengals, that's worth paying attention to. And you got to get Patrick Mahomes moving, man. And the best way to do that is to have Trey Hendrickson have a good game. Also going to be paying attention to DJ Reader, who's had a great postseason run here. And the Bengals obviously a little bit lacking depth in the interior of that defensive line without Larry Ogunjobi. It's asked a lot of DJ Reader these first two games. It's going to ask a lot of DJ Reader on Sunday.
So I know up front, you got Sam Hubbard. I think he's a great pass rusher. You got Logan Wilson at linebacker, had the key interception that, got the Bengals the football back late in that game against the Titans last week. And you got Jesse Bates, a great safety that's great at laying the wood on opposing receivers. But who do you believe is the X factor for this Bengals defense?
Jesse Bates, because we went into the season talking about him being the best safety in the NFL. And in the regular season, he didn't play like the best safety in the NFL. In the postseason, he has, and it's been a huge difference maker for this team. The reality is that the Kansas City Chiefs, against Buffalo, it's not like they were heaving the ball deep downfield. Yeah. They were completing short passes, and Tyreek Hill was streaking past dudes and throwing up the peace sign. You got to tackle. Yeah. So I look at Von Bell, and I look at Jesse Bates, and Jesse so far has been really, really good in the postseason.
I agree with you. I think Jesse Bates is going to be key as well for their defense. Two more questions for you. So I thought last week the Bengals being able to beat the Titans 19-16, it showed us that they can win different types of games. That win against the Titans, Mo, reminded me of their Week 15 game against the Denver Broncos. I think they won 15-10, but the offense, didn't put up over 300 yards total of offense in that game. And I thought it was a different type of brand of football that the Bengals played to win that game. So I feel pretty confident saying that this will be a game where the Bengals will have to keep pace with the Chiefs. And is it safe to say they're going to have to basically score at least 30 to beat the Chiefs? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I think it is. You talked about the Denver game. I think that sort of showed the flexibility that this coaching staff is working with, because you're right, in that Denver game, they said, okay, their secondary is great. Yeah, Denver's quarterback, which was Teddy Bridgewater, and then Drew Lock came in. Neither of those guys are going to beat us. Let's play field position football. Let's not turn it over. And they won 15-10. And then we've seen them have to empty the bag, which is what they did against Kansas City. Yeah, they're going to have to score 30 points, I think, to win on Sunday. But they've already done that against this team. And again, I think that the key stat is turnovers. When the Bengals don't lose the turnover battle, they're 11-1 this year. And so I think if we get to the fourth quarter, and if the Bengals haven't turned the football over, we got a game. And I think if they've turned the ball over a couple times, chances are in the fourth quarter, the game's not really going to be in doubt. All I've asked is give me a shot in the fourth quarter with Joe Burrow. And again, if they play clean and don't turn it over, I think they will. But yeah, you're not winning this game 21-17. You're going to have to hang somewhere between at least 4 and 5 touchdowns and maybe even more.
I agree. Fill in the blank for me, Mo. If blank happens, the Bengals will win this game.
If they win the turnover battle, as cliche as that sounds, if they win the turnover battle, and if they don't give up a ton of yards after the catch, they will win this football game.
I agree with you. One more before I get your prediction. So we know Joe Burrow is a big time quarterback, and he plays well in big time games. Mo, like we saw at LSU, he led the Tigers to a national championship. That year, he had 60 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, completing 76% of his passes. And this year, he had 500 yards over against the Ravens, probably got their coordinator fired, over 400, probably, and he had 400 yards against the Chiefs in Week 17. Why do you believe he plays so well in big games?
certain athletes, that's what they live for. They rise. It's as sort of unscientific as it sounds. They rise to the occasion when the stakes are, at their highest, and sometimes when the circumstances are at their most dire. And Joe just, there's just certain dudes who in big games, you just sense they live for it. And Joe Burrow is one of those guys. I mean, to me, people have compared him to Tom Brady, and that's maybe a little bit unfair, but that's how we recognize Tom Brady, right? I mean, in terms of physical attributes, you're not blown off the it doesn't blow the measurables off the chart, but boy, in big games, there's just something about him. And there's just something about Joe Burrow that's hard, I think, to really quantify. It's why it makes it sound silly when we talked about his hand size and all that crap, because at the end of the day, those things don't matter as much. And again, on Sunday, if I've got Joe Burrow on my team, I feel like I've got a shot. Agreed. Who wins this game, Mo? It's hard for me to say with a ton of conviction that the Bengals are going to win. But, there's something about having this quarterback. There's something about the way they played in the first go around. What you got to remember about the first time these two teams played is Chiefs played really well. It's not like they had a ton of turnovers. It's not like they just got outplayed by the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think the crowd noise is going to be as much of a factor as people fear. I think the Bengals are going to win the game. I'd be lying to you if I told you I felt great about that, and I'm not going to be surprised if they don't. But yeah, give me 34-31 Cincinnati. Give me Evan McPherson again at the gun. McPherson again at the gun. We know he is confident. He told Joe Burrow, once Joe Burrow got them in field goal range, he said, well, I guess we're going to the AFC Championship game. So you heard it here from Mo. And real quick, Mo, who do you got win the NFC Championship, Niners or Rams? I like San Francisco. I think they're extraordinary. Yeah, I think they're an extraordinarily tough matchup. Love Deebo Samuel, love George Kittle. That Rams team is really, really good. Talk about a team that's not going to have much of a home field advantage. I bet it sounds like a 49ers home game. I like San Francisco. That game is fascinating for 1,000 different reasons, but I like San Francisco. Man. I think they'll give me Bengals and 49ers for the third time in my life. Third time in your life. I don't know if you know this, Mo. I'm actually a diehard Packers fan, so I'm still depressed because my Packers came up short last week against the Niners. Yeah, man. 0-4 in the Aaron Rodgers era against the Niners. Niners actually have the Rams number. They've beaten the Rams 6 straight. So, and I think the Rams got all the pressure to win the NFC Championship more so than the Niners. Niners playing with house money. And LA has gone all in on this team, right? Trading draft picks and all that. So yeah, there's an immense amount of pressure on them. No doubt. Just like I think the Bengals are playing with house money, Mo. They have already overachieved this year. The Chiefs are the team that has the pressure to get back to the Super Bowl for a third consecutive season. Bengals playing with house money at this point. They've overachieved. They're playing, in the AFC Championship game. No one expected them to be here. So I think they are, in a position to pull off the upset possibly. But tell everyone where they can find you on social media, Mo, where they can find your show as well. At Mo Egger on Twitter, at Mo Egger on Instagram, and every day on ESPN 1530, which you can find on the iHeartRadio app. He's a sports talk show host at iHeartMedia. He's an afternoon host on ESPN 1530 and 700 WLW, and the contributor for The Athletic. He's Mo Egger. Mo, I appreciate you coming on the show. Enjoy the game this weekend. I definitely look forward to bringing you back on sometime soon to talk some football. Anytime, Trey. Thanks so much. Yes, I'm good. All right, buddy. See ya. Thanks, Trey.